I think we're now at the point where if we create the conditions for the survival of this regime, we're going to be right back here in another year. Because what we saw after June was a cosmic effort, aided by the Chinese, to rearm and to reconstitute their nuclear program. This was taking place at incredible speed. The Chinese were offloading thousands of components for ballistic missiles. We know that they were being put together in Iran, and look, that is what we are facing. And I think to strike a deal that leaves this regime, tottering though it is, in place would be a strategic defeat for the United States, because then we'll see what are the lessons taken by the Russians and the Chinese.
All right, guys, we are over the hump. It's tax day. Yay. Normally I'd say that's crazy, but considering all the stuff that President Trump and the Republicans have passed in the big, beautiful bill, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, all these other credits that are helping the country, maybe you should take a look at that refund. Because I actually think, according to a lot of the anecdotal evidence, it seems like Americans are getting more back, and hopefully Republicans are doing this. But I'll just be blunt. As much as I'm excited about that part of it, the Republicans just don't know how to sell this. I thought the president did a phenomenal job on that DoorDash stunt the other day by making sure people understood the no tax on tips. But these guys, they just don't know how to go out and sell their accomplishments. And if you don't tell people it happened, it's almost like it didn't occur. We are going to talk just very briefly, in just a very brief amount of time, I guess. It's the correct way of saying that, with former Secretary Robert Wilkie, also a colonel in the Air Force, by the way, about the latest in Iran. The president saying that he wants more talks. Admiral Brad Cooper, head of CENTCOM, saying overnight the blockade is in place. I think this blockade thing is brilliant, by the way, because it's really putting pressure on everyone. It chokes off Iran economically, which I think they thought was their ace in the hole, that somehow this was not giving them leverage. I don't think so anymore. China, I think, is now much more engaged because it affects them in a much more real economic way than it had. So I think this is going to be the, but just to be clear, there cannot be a deal where Iran gets to keep its uranium. President sort of lashing out. Apparently there was some attempt to make a deal about keeping it for 10 or 20 years. No, they pose a threat to us. We've got to make sure that we stop that. In other Washington news, by the way, Eric Swalwell, who had said that he was going to leave, dropped out as governor of the race for governor in California, and then said, I'm going to announce my resignation from Congress. He actually hit the road and said, I'm out, actually effective today, last night. And then Tony Gonzalez, a Republican. But this was on the heels of a brand new accuser coming forward saying that Swalwell drugged her, and then sexually assaulted her. And I have a feeling that Eric Swalwell might be seeing some jail time, because between New York, California, and some of these other things, he's got some problems. By the way, real quick little political side note. Gavin Newsom announced real quick off the bat this August 18th date to fill the seat. And I say that because they knew this real quick, which is, okay, if we're going to go down a seat, like if this had been a Republican, he wouldn't have even announced a special election. They're rushing because they want a Democrat to fill that seat, because Tony Gonzalez is going to be a tougher seat to hold in Texas. And so Democrats think that they might actually have an opportunity to fill this seat. And I'm just telling you, keep an eye. We'll talk about this later. This is a big deal. By the way, one quick little note. Have you seen this little addition to the studio? I apologize to the audio folks. Look at that. Added Trump 2.0 to the bookshelf right there. You see it? Do me a favor. Thanks to everybody who's gone out so far to order Trump 2.0 on Amazon. It is climbing up the charts as we, talk more and more about it. But I had an opportunity to talk at this Maha event. I mentioned this the other day, but just listen, on the back of the book, obviously President Donald J. Trump, because he wrote the foreword, Sarah Huckabee Sanders endorsing this, Newt Gingrich, Chris LaCivita, Dr. Oz, Steve Bannon, understanding why this is so important is critical if you really care about what the Trump agenda is about. Why Trump 2.0 is better and different is so important. And I'm just telling you that we got to do this. As I mentioned, a big panel coming tomorrow, as you know. And then on Friday, I'm going to break down the California governor's race because there's a lot of people who think we might actually pull this off. I don't know, but I talked to both Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco, the sheriff out there, about what their plans were. So we'll talk about that on Friday. Bring both of them and play those interviews for you. Before I get to that, though, I got to tell you, you guys know, as I travel, even every night, I have said to you guys, sleep is at the core of wellness. Every single night, I take my Beam Dream powder. And yes, I've now added a new one because I've gone through another bag of it. Every night, one scoop 30 minutes before I go to bed. I put it in water, put it in the microwave for 30 seconds. Again, how you do it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter what flavor you choose because it has every flavor of Beam Dream powder has the same 5 natural ingredients: reishi, apigenin, L-theanine, magnesium, and melatonin. I love this stuff because it combines all of those natural ingredients into one blend, and the blend is amazing. And I love when I fall asleep, I wake up feeling refreshed, ready to go because it gets you into that REM sleep. I track everything. I've got a Whoop. I've got an Oura Ring. I check my sleep all the time, and Beam Dream powder has made a massive difference. Here's the cool thing, though. Right now, they are offering the best discount that they've ever given, ever, full stop. 40% off if you go to shopbeam.com/Spicer and use code Spicer. Shopbeam, BEAM.com/Spicer, code Spicer, 40%. I'm warning you guys, I do not know when this best deal ever is going to end. It could be tomorrow. It could be next week. So if you are interested in joining me in making sleep a priority, go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer right now and stock up because this is the best deal I've ever seen. Without further ado, I want to bring in the former Undersecretary of Defense, Colonel in the Air Force, and Secretary of the Veterans Affairs, Robert Wilkie. Mr. Secretary, thanks for joining us again. We got a lot to break down, and I'm excited to get your insight on it.
It's good to see you, Sean. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So this morning, the president truthed out the following, just so that everybody can hear what he said. China is very happy that I am permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. I'm doing it for them also and the world. This situation will never happen again. They have agreed not to send weapons to Iran, that being China. We'll get into that in a second. President Xi will give me a big fat hug when I get there in a few weeks. We are working together smartly and very well. Doesn't that beat fighting? But remember, that's all in caps, just to remember. We are very good at fighting if we have to, far better than anyone else, President DJT. So let me just start there. Is China happy that he is opening the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, I don't take anything that Xi says at face value. Look, Iran is China's foothold in the Middle East. They buy about 90% of what Iran produces in energy. They don't ask any questions, or they wouldn't be in a position to ask any questions about Iran's human rights record. They use Iran as a funnel for the distribution of weapons, drones, ballistic missiles to the Russians. And they use Iran to keep the United States tied down in the event that they would go for Taiwan. Let's say this was a month or 3 months ago. The first call they would make would be to Tehran to foment trouble, to keep the United States Navy busy in the Middle East and distract us from what might be going on off the Chinese coast. So Iran is sort of the linchpin in China's strategy. Its arc of resistance that begins in Moscow, goes through Tehran, Beijing, and Pyongyang. And Iran is really the key because, as I said, Xi has been telling his people that the United States is not just declining, it's dead. And that within a few minutes, 5 weeks ago, All that went up in flames when most of the Iranian state, at least its military arm, was laid waste, and Chinese anti-air systems were shown to be absolutely useless against the power of the United States and the technology that the United States military brings. Um, look, cutting off the oil coming out of the Straits of Hormuz can really hasten, I think, the implosion of the Iranian regime. I mean, before this war started, the rial was 1.2 million to $1. If you cut off their ability to sell their oil, that's going to cascade. And I think the president really is setting the stage for the Iranian people to finally say enough.
Okay, so let's go back to this Truth Social post. He said, China is very happy that I'm permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. I thought that we were blockading it.
We are blockading it. In fact, the Chinese just a few hours ago tried to run the blockade, and the tanker was turned back.
Okay, but this is so. Again, I'm just trying to understand. Are we posturing here? Like, what when the president says they're happy we're opening it?
Yeah,
shouldn't they be pissed?
They should be. Again, they could not challenge the power of the United States Navy. Didn't want to risk it, and their tanker turned around. It was carrying methanol. I think to the Iranians, because what the blockade is doing is any ship that is doing business with the Iranians is stopped.
So you can't get in or out. It's not just out; it's in too, right?
It's in too.
Okay.
And they risk, if they don't stop, being boarded by both the Navy or the Marine Corps. So China, look, the Chinese have retreated, Sean, to the citadel of the United Nations because they've shown themselves to be absolutely helpless. And so do the Russians when it comes to aiding their Iranian client. And remember that the day before the president launched these attacks, the Chinese ships were offloading in Iranian ports ballistic missile components, particularly guidance systems. So the Chinese were trying to help the Iranians rebuild from the devastation that was inflicted upon them in June of last year by both the United States and the Israeli Defense Force.
So let's go back a step if we can. Do you think the blockade is a smart strategic move?
Yeah.
And why?
Let me tell you, let me give you the history. So we have been planning this operation since the Reagan administration. I was involved in it as both undersecretary and then as a planner in the Air Force. And I will say this, what surprised me was that we did not go for the Straits right at the beginning, because most of the planning for the last 40 years took as a given that the only point of leverage that the Iranians had was to disrupt global commerce by trying to close off the Straits. And in various plans through the decades, we were prepared not only to take Karg Island, where 90% of Iran's revenue flows, but also to take islands in the Strait to prevent the very thing that we've seen happen in the last few weeks. That also included a pretty comprehensive air campaign by the Air Force with its heavy punch, the B-52s, B-1s, B-2s, along the southern Iranian littoral that would have eliminated all of their fast boat mine laying capabilities and their abilities to launch drones in the event that we did those things. I will say I am actually surprised that that was not part of the operational plan. It may have been, but someone in the civilian chain didn't follow through.
So, okay, then I'm going to actually step back even a step back. Was the blockade the smart move at this time, or should there have been something that we did additionally or before we did the blockade to your example there about
Yeah.
taking Carg Island or those others.
Yeah, I think we should have done those things.
But would that have put boots on the ground then?
Oh, sure. Sure, it would have put boots on the ground on those islands and those straits. But look,
don't you think that's what prevented that though? My thinking is that when the president was given that option, he said, "I'd rather not have U.S. boots on the ground. What else you got?"
Well, the problem is, and you know this as a naval officer, no war, and this goes all the way back to World War II, actually prior to that, no war has ever been won from the air. It cannot be done. As much damage as we've inflicted, the ability of the armed forces of the United States, I mean, the Air Force is a preparatory force. The only time that a war has been won from the air with 2 strikes in 1945 on Japan, but that was the exception because of its the unusual nature of the deployment of those 2 nuclear weapons. But you cannot look at this realistically without launching the Marine Corps or the 82nd Airborne Division, which the planning called for, to do those things in the islands and really, really cut the lifeline to the regime off.
So at this point then, assuming that, I mean, look, I've got to think, you mentioned the civilian chain of command. I'm with you. I believed that the next step had to be some kind of boots on the ground. The preparation with the USS Tripoli and the Marines all sort of indicated that that's where this was going, right? Then it didn't. I think what happened was, and again, I want you to tell me if I'm off base on this, is they said, well, option B is we do a blockade, we starve the Iranians, and we kind of leverage China to maybe force the Iranians to a deal because they're going to want to get in and out.
Yeah. Well, the sad thing is, I think we're now at the point where if we create the conditions for the survival of this regime, we're going to be right back here in another year. Because what we saw after June was a cosmic effort, aided by the Chinese, to rearm and to reconstitute their nuclear program. This was taking place at incredible speed. The Chinese were offloading thousands of components for ballistic missiles. We know that they were being put together in Iran, and look, that is what we are facing. And I think to strike a deal that leaves this regime, tottering though it is, in place would be a strategic defeat for the United States, because then we'll see what are the lessons taken by the Russians and the Chinese.
So let me get back to the question that I asked though. Is the blockade smart, and will it be effective? Will it be effective?
Yes. I think in conjunction with the things that I talked about, yes, it will be, because then you have no revenue flowing into the Iranian economy. There's really nothing the Chinese can do now, because as I said, the one ship that they tried to run the blockade was told, you turn around or we board you, and it turned around. So yes, I think
you think that holds though? Do you think that, like, in other words, maybe the first one, but do you think the Chinese are going to let that happen again?
Yeah. What are they going to do? They have no response. They haven't been able to do anything to help their clients since the shooting war started in June. Neither have the Russians. And I was being serious when I said they've retreated to the citadel of the United Nations. When the Chinese and the Russians, the primary thugs on the planet, start preaching about international law and the rights of innocent passage, then one, they're impotent in the face of this American power in that region. And the other thing I'll say, Sean, if you look at what the Navy, the history of our Navy, the Russians tried the United States Navy in 1962 around Cuba. um, and they stopped. They turned back.
Right.
Um, the Confederacy was cut off because the United States Navy blocked its ports. Uh, Imperial Germany was brought to its knees not so much by the terrible casualties on the Western Front, but because the Royal Navy imposed a blockade on Germany that prevented them from feeding their own population. So this is a long history. We have a long history of success with this. And look, the Chinese military, let's say their only combat experience is killing their own people. That is the given, and they've never been tested. And you see the limits of their braggadocio in this particular region. They're outgunned if they tried it. And again, they're being exposed as being really helpless to assist their proxy.
So the president said last night in some media interviews that he is hoping that talks can continue.
Yeah.
Protection around two. I've been of the mindset that Iran doesn't want a deal.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I guess the broader question is, do you think that, that you see a scenario that talks continue, that there's any progress? I just don't get, like, we tried this before the war. We had talks. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff led those. They went nowhere. We went 21 hours with them this weekend with Vice President Vance leading the team. They went nowhere. Is there any scenario that you see where these talks are fruitful?
I don't. These are dead enders. They're messy. They're messianic. No, I don't. And I want to remind people, and I'll go back to my childhood. I think you and I have talked about this before. In 1979, when the Ayatollah came to power, I was a youngster at Fort Bragg. My father was the G3 of the 18th Airborne Corps, which in military lore is the chief of planning for, at that time, the 101st Airborne and the 82nd Airborne Division. One of our neighbors, Colonel, just happened to be in Tehran on 2 weeks of temporary duty in November of 79, and then he became a guest of the Ayatollah for 450 days. We lived a block away from a guy named Colonel Charles Beckwith, who was the father of Delta, but was also the commander of the ill-fated rescue operation in 1980, Desert One, when the Marine barracks were blown by Iran. One of my father's duties was to be the Army portion of the team looking at what had happened. So I've seen this now for 40-something years. They've killed thousands of our people. They killed Jews across the globe. And this is not a regime that understands anything except brute force. And sometimes they won't even understand that.
Okay, so that's not very optimistic.
No.
I think very realistic, but not optimistic. So
Right.
then let's kind of go from there. Like, so then where does this go? Like, if they don't want a deal, we potentially continue to choke them economically and commercially, or we go back in and start blowing stuff up.
Yeah. I think it'll be it should be a combination of both.
The president says it's over.
Yeah. Well, he did say it was over a few weeks ago too. I don't think it's over. There's still many targets out there, and you just hit it. You strangle the economics, and that is buttressed by the kinetic power of the Navy and the Air Force. Look, if you look at the Iranian negotiating strategy, Sean, right before the vice president came in, all of a sudden, the Iranians put demands on the table that weren't even part of their opening gambit. They said, no, we're not going to stop funneling money to Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, that Lebanon is now the be-all and end-all when it comes to negotiation. they said, well, we'll take a pause on nuclear production for 5 years. I mean, that's the Obama way.
Right.
That's not the Trump way. So you see what they're doing. It's a traditional Middle Eastern gambit to stretch out and wear down someone on the other side of the table, with the appearance that things are progressing simply because you're talking.
Right. That's we're having a meeting, but so let's kind of get back to brass tacks for a second.
Yeah.
So the blockade, let's just say that it stays in place and it starts to work. It chokes them economically. We go in, we blow some more stuff up, some of these strategic targets. I guess this gets back to the fundamental question about the negotiation. Is there a point at which they say, okay, or do we just literally have to go after that regime person by person till we get to somebody? Like, I guess what I'm fundamentally asking, Mr. Secretary, is where does this end? How does this end?
Yeah. Well, let me start from what happens if we pull back now, and the regime is still in place. Let me just give you one other statistic. General Keith Kellogg and I were talking about this morning before I came on with you. I gave a speech on Monday where I said that in the month of January, the Iranians killed more of their own people than we lost in the entire Korean War in 1 month. I mean, that to me, that is staggering. And that tells you what they are willing to do to survive.
Yeah.
Which means you go into a negotiation with them understanding what the predicate, you have to understand what the predicate is before you even tell them hello. So yes, I think if we pull back now, if the regime is intact and they go about doing what they have done in the past, the downstream effects in terms of American prestige are going to be cataclysmic. I think the Chinese will take a lesson that the United States can be outlasted. The Russians will be happy that their pipeline from Iran to Russia will open up again, that the Iranians will begin reconstituting, particularly their drone facilities. Now, look, they've been hammered in a way that is almost totally devastating. They've lost most of their industrial base. They've lost their leaders, at least their military leaders. But this is Henry Kissinger said that a guerrilla wins by not losing. A conventional force loses by not winning. And I'm putting the Iranians in the category of a guerrilla force compared to the conventional might of the United States. And we have to do everything we can to end this chapter.
Okay, so let's get back to what does victory look like? I mean, at some point, either we walk away, we cut some mealy-mouthed deal. We say you can't enrich uranium for 10 years, or we win in a traditional sense.
Let's go back to the 1980s. The United States Navy kept, with its presence, the Sixth Fleet, kept open the Straits of Hormuz for almost 3 years. We know how to do this.
Yeah, but that's keeping the strait open. That's the economic piece.
But that's the economic piece that strangles. The downstream effects would be devastating. But I do think that we have to continue to eliminate leader after leader. We still haven't wreaked havoc on the Basji, on all of the IRGC training sites, on a lot of their weapons caches. All of those things need to be done to reduce this force to rubble. And look, the campaigns, and I don't know if you saw these in your military career, but the plans, and of course, no plan ever survives first contact. But as Eisenhower said, the plan's nothing, but planning is everything. The plans called for multiple months of hits on Iran. This was not a 5-week endeavor. And Admiral Cooper has been preaching that we have the plans in place to completely devastate what is left of Iran's political class, what is left of its military class. And he's going by a playbook that has been 40 years in development. So we still have not unleashed that part of this equation. And then, of course, there's always what the Israelis do and what they know.
So do you, if you're watching this show right now, listening to you, and you say to yourself, what does the scenario look like in June, in 2 months? Is it that we're bombing the crap out of them, taking out additional targets, and we're using our naval assets to keep the strait open so that you can flow stuff in and out? I mean, what? Just sort of put.
So there's another prong to that. If you remember, in 1979, we knew the Shah was finished when the security forces stopped firing on the Iranian people. I am guaranteed that the CIA, the Israelis, are in constant communication with the Iranian army, which is not revolutionary. These are normal Iranians who have been conscripted into service. And they're telling them, and you know, this some people may think this is a thin reed to grasp, but they're telling them, it's your time. Take your country back. Do what your forebears did in the times of the Shah. Stop killing your own people and get rid of these folks who have brought devastation to you. I think what the president has been waiting for is those things to happen, particularly in the streets, when the folks just come out and overwhelm, with the help of the regular army, those forces. So there's so many different layers to this. But then again, this is the Middle East. It's the most complicated place on the planet.
So again, Robert Wilkie grabs his crystal ball and says, I'm going to tell Sean Spicer's audience where we are in June and July of this year. What do you see in that crystal ball?
If we follow the plans, I think we'll be near the eradication of the Ayatollahs.
And we just need to attrit one by one, boom, 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 till we get to.
And the Israelis are doing that, but we need to, as I said, cut off the finances and then blast away not only at their ability to terrorize their neighbors, but their ability to terrorize their own people.
Okay. And does China, I mean, getting back to the president's Truth Social where we started, does China just sit back and say, all right, we're cool with this. You guys just keep blowing these guys. I mean, because if they think that Iran is this foothold in the Middle East, are they okay with us blowing this stuff away?
Well, they're not okay with it, but there's nothing they can do about it.
Really?
What can they do?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
They've never launched it. They don't have the expeditionary capability.
All right, so let me throw this a different way. What can they say? Well, hey, you guys, the U.S. blockaded the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to block the Strait of Taiwan. We're going to South China. I mean, is it precedent-wise? Hey, you guys did it. Why can't we?
Right now, there is no estimate that I have seen that the Chinese are prepared to do that. They don't have the capability. I mean, if they had the capability to launch over the 120 miles of the straits, they would have done that a long time ago.
Do they have the I hesitate in using this phrase, but please bear with me. Do they have the moral authority to now say, hey, the U.S. closed the Strait of Hormuz. That's not yours to close. We're going to try to close the Strait of Taiwan because technically it's kind of ours, according to our read. And these are our territorial water. I mean, in other words, can they make a moral justification that says, why can't we do what you guys did over there and you guys shouldn't be able to complain?
Well, the problem for the Chinese would be to choke off almost all of their commerce. I mean, their economy is reeling now because of Xi's retreat back into the Maoist citadel. to do something like that could lead to a cascading series of effects on his own economy.
So it's not in their interest.
It's not in their interest right now. I mean, those are the busiest sea lanes on the planet. If he were to do that, the Chinese economy would take a hit that it would probably have trouble recovering from. So he's got that on his plate. And the Straits are they're very different in the sense that, they are co-owned not only by the international community, but by so many other nations in the region.
We jokingly brought up the UN.
Yeah.
Obviously, I love these folks that suddenly care about diplomacy. I just want you to answer this for people out there, especially the libtards that call me and say, "Oh, well, the UN has a role to play in this." You saw, even the Irish Taoiseach, its equivalent of the Prime Minister, when he was at the White House for St. Patrick's Day, said, we'd love the UN to play a role here. I know the answer to this, but for anyone who might think that that's a possibility, what's the answer?
Well, the only thing the UN is good for, and it's not even good for rent in New York City because they're feud, is what Jeane Kirkpatrick called the Turkish bath theory of politics. Let people let off steam. But let me tell you what the UN is. The only permanent agenda item on the docket of the UN Human Rights Council is Israel. 60% of the UN General Assembly resolutions of the last 10 years have been about one little country the size of New Jersey. If Jews are not involved, the UN doesn't care. What I mean by that, the Chinese have built a concentration camp system for Muslims. That would be the envy of Joseph Stalin. The Pakistanis unleashed or forced by bayonet into the clutches of the Taliban 1 million Muslims. The UN said nothing. Bashar Assad killed 800,000 Muslims, gassed many of them, and the UN said nothing. It's only when Israel is involved and when the clownish General Secretary of the UN decides to get on the world stage, he does nothing but bash the United States. And the notion, Ireland has become even a joke on the European continent. It is openly anti-Semitic. Its society is collapsing in and around itself. And it's so funny because this is a country that spends nothing on defense because their theory is, well, the United States is on one side of the ocean.
Yeah.
And our old buddies, the British, are not going to let anything happen to us. So we can play radical politics.
Yeah, I love, by the way, and I didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole here because I do love the fact that a small island is telling us what to do. And it's like, it's like the freeloaders that love to tell everyone how the party should go. But you mentioned the UK and there's this effort now. We talked about the UN, obviously that's, but the UK and other European nations are having this discussion about, I apologize for laughing, about how they're going to keep the strait open, which I find fascinating. You know what I thought of though? Is I'm not trying to be completely disrespectful and dismissive, but I felt like it was like they were at a meeting and they went like, hey, who's got a minesweeper? Who's got, everybody was like trying to figure out, but like, I think that the media is treating this as a real alternative, and I find it laughable.
Yeah, it's performance art masquerading as diplomacy. And so look at the United Kingdom, the once mighty United Kingdom, the Royal Navy that was the scourge of the oceans for 500 years, vanquished Napoleon, vanquished the Kaiser, vanquished Hitler. Made the world safe for international commerce. They couldn't get a destroyer out of Scotland to get to Cyprus to provide air defense cover for their RAF base on that island. It got out, it left Rosyth 2 hours later, the welds in the hull burst and the thing started to sink before it left British waters. That and the other thing, let me just go through the statistics because I was on British television yesterday with the former chief of defense staff, Sir Jock Stirrup. And the the entire British Army, Sean, can fit into Wembley Stadium, and the top level is clear. And now they're relying on France to protect their base in the Mediterranean. And one other group of statistics, because Canada needs to be mentioned here as well.
Do they?
When I was born, Canada had the fourth largest army in NATO. Even Eisenhower said the finest troops he commanded were Canadian. The Canadian Army is now the size of the Alabama National Guard, our fifth largest state, and it's probably less effective than the Alabama National Guard. I think they have 50 pilots in their Air Force, and 16 of them fly for the Snowbirds, their demonstration team. The point I'm making is that the one element of this equation that President Trump has brought to the fore in ways that its predecessors going all the way. I mean, Eisenhower said we fail if in 10 years, and this was at the end of his presidency, if in 10 years Europe can't defend itself. They have lived for most of this time just saying, let America do it.
Yes.
And now they're using the rhetoric of the President of the United States as another excuse to do nothing. And look, it's what I call the Polyphemus dirge from Homer's Odyssey. Remember, Polyphemus said to Odysseus in the cave, "Well, I'll do you a favor. I'll eat you last." And that's what this is: eat me last. And they are waltzing toward disaster.
Okay. And in the final couple minutes we have, I want to address two quick things on the capabilities. If we don't, let me phrase this differently. In your opinion, if we don't address Iran's uranium and its potential enrichment capabilities, is that a loss for the U.S.?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Look what they did real fast. In just a couple of months after Biden left, during Biden's administration, not when he left, they enriched their uranium from 60 to 80%. 90% is weapons grade. They were doing this under the cover of Biden's acquiescence to the JCPOA and his distribution of billions of dollars to the theocratic fanatics. Again, to go back to eat me last. And if anything, this has shown just how feckless Obama and Biden have been. But yes, they will do it. They've said they will do it. I think I said earlier, they sat down, well, we won't do anything for 5 years. Well, remember what Obama and Biden let them do. They said, oh yeah, just keep away from it until we're out of office.
Right.
And then you can do whatever you want.
I keep saying that this is the whole point of what President Trump has done, which is to address the fact that like every other president, frankly, in a bipartisan way, has just kicked the can down the road. As long as the threat's not on my watch, what President Trump has done is taken the leadership to say, I don't want it to ever threaten the United States, ever, full stop, not just while I'm president. But this goes back to the uranium piece, the nuclear piece, 100% in agreement on. I think for a lot of people right now, they look at what we're saying we've accomplished, which is we've taken out their Navy, we've taken out their Air Force, but we watch them fire shoulder rocket grenades or missiles, launch stuff. They've got like at least 1,000 medium range missiles, still some drone capabilities. What do we need to do? Two questions. I mean, one question, two parts. What is it that they still have left, right, in terms of capabilities to threaten us ballistically and conventionally? And then secondly, what do we need to do to that capability?
Well, they started with 2,500 ballistic missiles. They don't have many of them left. I think we know where some of them are. Their mobile launchers have been reduced by about 80%. We have to find those and get rid of them, because if we get rid of those, then what's left of their ballistic missiles just becomes a fireworks factory, because it's not going to do anything. And we still have to search out those areas where they have military stores that have what's left of their anti-air capability, the kinds of things that you're talking about. Again, the planning that covers many administrations called for many months of observation and attack. And I think, only 5 weeks into this, I still think there's a lot more that can be done.
Okay. But just lastly, so that people are sitting at home right now, do they have the capability to threaten us? And what do we need to do about that?
They still have the capability to threaten our forces in the region, but they also have the ability, which they have not completely uncovered. Remember, these are people who've tried to assassinate the president of the United States. They have the ability to wreak terror around the planet. I have to want to remind people that those protests that we saw at the Ivy League campuses, who financed them? It was Iranian money being funneled through Venezuela that fueled this. And by the way, if you don't think that the elimination of Maduro went beyond the Caribbean, what Maduro was doing was allowing the Iranians to funnel their killers and Hezbollah killers through Venezuela, where they received diplomatic immunity and passports to spread throughout the planet. So those forces are still out there. So I look for not as much in the United States, although that is a threat, but I do look for the Iranian attacks on soft targets around the globe. The Swedish intelligence service, I just talked to the Swedish defense minister. They've uncovered 12 plots in the last 2 or 3 months by Iranians to attack Swedish targets. So this is something that's pervasive, and we have to be on guard. And as Golda Meir said, if someone tells you over and over again he wants to kill you, believe it. And that's the bottom line here.
I've been preaching that myself, that when they chant death to America, maybe take them seriously.
That's right.
Secretary Colonel Robert Wilkie, I love your input and your insight. Thanks for joining us. Really look forward to seeing you soon again.
Thank you, Sean. There's no finer patriot than Mr. Spicer, or Captain Spicer.
I'm going to clip that. Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Again, please go to Amazon right now, and order Trump 2.0. I'm really trying to get those Amazon numbers up. A lot of people around the country are buying the book. I really appreciate it. Got a great column out at SeanSpicer.com. Looking forward to the panel tomorrow and then breaking down California on Friday. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.